All right, following up the UFC's latest pay-per-view offering is UFC Fight Island 4, going down tomorrow night in Abu Dhabi, which will be an important night for the women's 135-pound division, as well as a potential showcase for some up-and-coming athletes primed to make some noise inside the hallowed octagon. As we welcome you, wonderful fight fans, to the UFC Fight Island 4 preview show for MMAfighting.com. I am Mike Hack, being joined by our boots on the ground in Abu Dhabi, Jose Youngs, and the Prince of Positivity himself, Mr. Alex K. Lee. Jose, we will start with you. We have two big women's bantamweight bouts tomorrow night. Germaine de Randamie versus Juliana Pena is the featured bout. The main event, Holm versus Irene Aldana. Of course, Amanda Nunes has her next fight on the books. It'll be at 145, defending against Megan Anderson. But as far as her bantamweight title is concerned, you have to imagine that if Aldana and or Pena are victorious, Nunes is going to have her follow-up fight ready and waiting. Is that how you view this as well?
Yeah, it's going to be one or the other, and I would lean Irene Aldana, considering I think her win streak is a little more, she's been more active more recently. She's had a lot of impressive wins, and I just think the win over Holly Holm is still, like, who's Holly lost to? Like Valentina, Amanda Nunes, Germaine de Randamie. She's only lost to champions or former champions. So I think a win over Holly Holm, and especially in a main event on Fight Island, is just, I think, a bigger deal than beating Germaine de Randamie. And that's no insult to Germaine de Randamie. She's an unbelievable fighter. But also Juliana Pena, of course, hasn't been the most active fighter. No fault of her own. She had a kid. And then she's supposed to come back, and then she had the one fight against Nico Montano, and then when she was supposed to fight Aspen Ladd had to pull out, so and that fight was going to get canceled anyway, so because of the pandemic. So it's no fault of her own, but I just think Irene Aldana has been more active and has had some uber impressive finishers. Her knockout over Kelly Vieta is one of, if not the most, I want to say, most violent female knockouts I've ever seen. Like, you don't see a lot of female fighters just one punch dead their opponent. You've seen a lot of like Jessica Andrade, obviously, against Karolina Kowalkiewicz, and then when she dropped Rose on her head. But that hook on Kelly Vieta's jaw that put her to sleep was so impressive. And I honestly think Aldana did enough to get the title shot anyway. Like, she doesn't have to fight Holly Holm, but of course, Amanda Nunes is fighting at 145. So Aldana said she wants to stay active and kind of erase the question. So all respect to her. I just think if both come out on top, Irene will get the next shot.
AK, Jose alluded to it. Most people believe that Aldana should have already had the title shot locked and loaded. She's won 5 out of 6. The one loss of the mix was the split decision loss to Raquel Pennington. And there are folks out there who thought Aldana did enough on her back, like off of her back, to actually squeak out that decision. I am not one of those folks. I thought Pennington squeaked that one by, but she did bounce back with wins over Vanessa Mello and then the knockout win over Vieta. She now has her first main event against a former world champion. Holmes coming off that win against Pennington in January, that in a fight that certainly didn't have people jumping out of their seats. But when you look at this fight stylistically, AK, what sticks out to you?
I mean, I guess a lot of people would want to look at it as power versus technique, which I think would take away from Aldana, who has a lot of technique and also a lot of power. I think what's exciting about it is the possibility that, Aldana's aggression maybe brings out another side of Holm that we don't have to see, because Holm is obviously such a talented fighter, but she's also a really smart fighter, and it takes a lot to get her out of her comfort zone. And if you don't get out of her comfort zone, you end up with, again, convincing wins like she had against Raquel Pennington, but wins that aren't exactly getting fans clamoring to see her competing for yet another title shot. So the hope is that, again, Aldana challenges her, and if you're the home camp, challenge her enough that it gets home to a spectacular performance and a memorable performance and maybe a finish, but not so much that Aldana just knocks her on her ass. So in that sense, I want to be optimistic and say this could be one of the more entertaining Holly Holm fights that we've seen in a while. I know there's a lot of skepticism around that. Again, anyone who's seen Holly Holm, very tactical fighter, talented fighter, and a winner, but again, not someone who's always producing barn burners or fighting the night awards or things like that. So I do think we'll see not just a competitive fight, but a more entertaining one than some people might be seeing on paper.
Jose, that leads me to one of my more questions of interest when it comes to this fight, because Holly Holm is in an interesting position right now. She still has a lot of name value. The UFC obviously still sees something in that name and in Holly Holm as a fighter. But the thing I'm most curious about is, what if Holly Holm wins tomorrow night? Like, what if she goes out there and has a great performance against Irene Aldana? What happens then?
I think it would depend on how she wins. Like if she goes out there and just crushes, like head kicks her like she did to Ronda, the UFC wants to get her another title shot, and then Juliana Pena is there too. But say like all 4 women, because let's not forget Germaine Randamie there too. She's not going to get a shot at 135 anytime soon, especially when a man is the champion because she's already 0-2 against her. But like say in this hypothetical world, Juliana Pena and Holly Holm come out on top. Maybe they book those two in like a number 1 contender fight down the road, especially if Amanda Nunes needs time to get to 135. Because let's not forget, Amanda Nunes has teased retirement. She just had her first kid. She's now a new mom. So maybe her times, not just at 135, but just fighting in general, are coming to an end. Even if she gives up the 135-pound belt and Holly Holm is now the number 1 contender and say Juliana Payne is the number 1 contender, maybe this is what the UFC is trying to do. But it's hard to say, considering especially in 2020, it's hard to plan 1 week, let alone like let's look at 2021 in this division that we don't know if the champion's going to stick around. So a lot of things need to play out in the world of mixed martial arts before we can try and match make the women's 135-pound title picture.
So currently, Aldana is a slight favorite, averaging around a minus 125. Holm a slight dog at plus 105. I think that's about right. But AK, who do you like in this one and why?
I'm gonna go with Aldana. I again, there's that part of me that is is very fearful of again the talent of Holly Holm, and again her ability to make potentially great offensive fighters look bad. I mean that's a skill of Holly Holm. It's a credit to her, and it's why she's been stuck around for so long and why she keeps getting these big opportunities. But I think Aldana is peaking at the right time. I know that's always kind of a difficult thing to gauge, but that is what I see in her recent performance. Like you said, even in the Pennington fight, maybe she didn't quite do enough to win, but she did show how dangerous she is against a fighter with a difficult style, much like Holly Holm has. So I like Aldana. I like her power. I don't know if she can knock Holm out. That's a lot to ask for. Amanda Nunes is the only one who's done it, and I'm not sure if Aldana is quite on that level of striking ability and power. But I do see her over a 5-round fight, figuring stuff out with Holly Holm and avoiding Holm's best weapons. Maybe staying away from the wrestling. Holly Holm's shown that she's very good at taking fights in that direction as well, and so Aldana's gonna have to be ready for that. But I do see her pushing the pace and being the one that sets the tone. Otherwise, because if she doesn't, again, then you get a Holly Holm decision win. But otherwise, I do think Aldana will do enough and take it on the scorecards.
Jose, what do you think?
I was pretty 50-50 coming into Fight Island because, again, Holly Holm can beat anyone, and she's only lost to the best of the best and has beaten everyone else. Irene Aldana's resume is nowhere near the level of Holly Holm's. But at the same time, she's looked uber impressive, just like AK said. But then in media day, when we were talking with her, she was detailing like the fallout of her, because she caught the coronavirus, and it just sounded awful. She was talking about the symptoms she had, how it affected her training, how Mexico, it's hitting Mexico very hard because some people not that they're not taking it seriously, but there's just so many people and everyone is on top of each other, especially in Mexico City. I wonder how good of her how much of her training camp was affected by this virus that she caught, and if she still is 100%, because we've heard a lot of people say when you catch it, just even though you get past it, the symptoms are still there. Like you feel it long after you've quote unquote recovered. So I don't know if we're getting the 100% healthy Irene Aldana, and that's not like an injury or anything. That's because she caught a virus that has started a pandemic that is sweeping across the globe. So I have to lean Holly Holm. I think she gets it. I'll say decision because, again, Holly can beat anyone. Even if Irene was 100%, I would still slightly favor Holly, but especially with Irene possibly not being 100% recovered from. Because remember, one of their previous fights was rescheduled because she caught the coronavirus. So I lean Holly Holm.
Yeah, this is a super close fight to me because there's some interesting things to look at here. One, as AK talked about, Holm is very good at being tactical and picking her shots and staying away. Aldana is definitely the better volume striker, and she counters extremely well. Holm is also a southpaw, so that could kind of negate some of Aldana's tools on the feet. Plus, Holm has found some love for the clinch game against the fence, and Aldana hasn't really experienced that too much in her career. So I think if you're betting, you might want to take a shot on Holm for the plus money, but I think Aldana, if she's able to get loose and have fun and avoid the clinches against the fence, she has a good chance here, because even if she gets taken down by Holly, I think Aldana's ground game is super underrated. So I'm going to lean Aldana because I think she's got more tools to win. But if you kind of lean towards Holm for the big fight experience and the thing that she does really well, I wouldn't fall you for that. But this is as close to a 50-50 fight as we'll see in this division. But the co-main event, this thing's not going to go the distance. Yorgan Castro versus Carlos Felipe.
Don't say that.
Just my gut is telling me this. I'm trying not to throw that out into the universe, but both guys are coming off their first pro losses in their last fights. These two guys have been known to finish fights quickly. There seems to be a little animosity here. AK, safe to say that we're going to put it on the universe. Do you agree that this one probably doesn't go to the judges' scorecards? Not definitely, but probably?
As the Prince of Positivity, I am required to say, yes, we are going to see a thrilling first round knockout between two heavyweights who are very much inclined to keeping things standing. I really loved what I saw from De Castro in his Contender Series fight. He showed a really great diversity to his striking game. He won a fight that he definitely was not expected to win, which is what you always like to see. You like to see that determination, that grit. So there's a lot to like there. The fight against Greg Hardy was a little discouraging, but again, Greg Hardy is certainly an athletic heavyweight. He's proven to be a tough out, so not take anything away from De Castro losing that fight. But I haven't asked for pick it, but I do like De Castro here. Felipe, he had a good effort against Sergey Spivak. Wrestling is certainly an issue, in which it will be here. So I guess that's why we should be optimistic that these two are just going to square off, respectfully start throwing hands, and someone's going to land and put the other guy down. But we are also, in a situation where they're both pretty good strikers and have good chins. So I don't know if someone's going to land that big bomb. But again, Prince of Positivity, yes, we will have a highlight. We'll have a highlight in the co-main events that will at least somewhat justify the placement of these two relatively unknown heavyweights getting such a high spot on the Fight Island card.
What do you think, Jose? Because, De Castro, obviously a fellow New Englander. The leg kick game that he has is absolutely brutal. You saw it in the Contender Series fight. He tried to use those against
that fight.
Yeah. And, in the Greg Hardy fight, he tried to use them, but then he hurt himself throwing a leg kick, and the entire complexity of the fight changed. Greg Hardy took over from there, and Yorgan just wasn't the same guy. Do you see any hesitation from Yorgan to maybe go to those leg kicks because of what happened in the last fight, or do you think we'll see a heavy leg kicking game that's just going to make us ooh and ah and groan throughout the entire fight?
That's a good question. I don't think he's going to be hesitant to throw them whatsoever, considering that's what got him to the dance. And like you said, he got injured. But my gut says this fight's going to suck. And I think it's unfortunate because these guys are great. These guys are great fighters, and they usually put their opponents to bed. But like what? Was Felipe, didn't he have like one decision? Like he's reached the decision 3 times in his career, and his last fight was a decision loss. And then Yorgan Castro fought Greg Hardy to a decision. Like these are heavyweights fighting to decisions and losing. So yeah, De Castro is awesome and he puts people to bed. And Felipe has a lot of KOs and TKO wins too. But every time we say this fight isn't making it out of X amount of round, it never ever works out. Because I remember last Fight Island card, there were a lot of heavyweight fights, and remember I was like, this fight is a table. This fight could be a table. This fight has all signs pointing to this could be a table, which is unfortunate. I would obviously not be surprised if it ended in about 30 seconds, but because they do not like each other. At the media day, they talked all that greasiness, and then Felipe refused to shake Yorgan Castro's hands at the stare downs because he said he was talking all that greasiness, and he's got to check himself. And Castro's like, I'm too fast, I'm too powerful, I'm too strong. And it's like, man, every time you say this, it makes me think this fight's gonna suck even more, just because that's been the theme as well. So I'll say a decision win for De Castro, but I hope it's not.
This is a man who has been burned by MMA. This is a man. That was a hurt man's analysis of this co-main event. Tomorrow is another day, Jose. You forget all the stuff that's happened in the past. This is Yorgan De Castro.
I am using the formulific method.
This is true.
When we get two opponents that are knockout and submission artists or whatever they are, and they don't like each other, and they're going to war in this big co-main event, and then we get Greg Hardy versus De Castro, or someone gets hurt, and before De Castro, Greg Hardy were like, "There's no way this fight gets out of one round. They're just two hulking behemoths that are going to trade leather." And then what happened?
I'm sure there is evidence of fights that did live up to this exact billing. This is just like when people say, "Oh, all the cards with that aren't hypes, like this one in particular, all the cards that have no hype behind them always turn out to be good." That's just confirmation bias. You're only remembering the bad instances of what you just brought up.
But you just said the key phrase in there is "I'm sure there are," because you can't even name them.
I cannot name one right now, but probably because there's so many. It's probably so common that I can't even think of a specific example.
Sure.
What is your degree of? What's your degree of difficulty scale on this card, AK? I didn't even ask you.
6 out of 10.
That's not,
but
6.5 is pretty good. I'd agree with that.
I think I went 6.5 for no, I went very high, quite a bit higher for last week actually. No, this is like a 6. But I think like that's a low bar for me. That's like very little has to happen for it to achieve that mark. The fights just have to be relatively entertaining. I want 4 or 5 good finishes, performance bonus worthy finishes, and then some good contests that go to a decision. Because I think we'll have quite a few decisions on this card, and that's not a bad thing. So 6 is a very low bar. It could be a 6 out of 6. Let me put it that way. Does that sweeten the deal for you guys out there in viewer land? It could easily hit this very low bar that I've set for it, but I think that's about as high as it goes. I can't imagine the card delivering, surpassing that, unless again we get some crazy Holm head kick or something in the main event. Again, the Castro and Felipe just going to war. Again, we have a lot of other matchups later that could be good decisions, but 6 out of 10.
This fight will probably determine whether we hit that 6 or not, because I don't know what the main event's going to be. It's going to be a pretty technical fight, I think. But second go around the octagon for Carlos Felipe de Castro. This is a pretty good follow-up test coming off the Greg Hardy fight. We got 500 pounds swinging them bombs at each other in the octagon. I have a feeling that this is going to be a fun fight for as long as it lasts. But I'll lean towards the favorite de Castro here to get it done. So let's touch on the featured bout, because this is outside the main event. No offense to Castro and Felipe, but this is the second most, important fight on the card. Germaine de Randamie, she feels a little bit disrespected being in this spot. Take it on the returning Juliana Pena. Been over a year since we saw her defeat Nico Montano in Sacramento, and GDR's coming off the loss to Amanda Nunes. I guess, Jose, I'll start with you. Who is more at stake here? Is it Pena trying to get her first shot at a title, or de Randamie looking to keep her place as the number 1 ranked 35er?
That's a good question. Who has the most to gain and who has the most to lose? That's a very interesting question. I don't know, because they're just in polar opposite parts. Like Juliana Pena wins, she get a title shot, and Germaine de Randamie is just trying to win to stay relevant at number 1 in case Amanda Nunes decides to relinquish the belt or whatever. So I don't know. That's a very interesting question. It's just because Germaine, like I said, is not getting a title shot as long as Amanda Nunes has the championship, and Juliana Pena firmly believes in her mind, no matter what happens, she's getting the title shot if she wins on Saturday, or Sunday for me. So interesting question, but so I have no idea. They're just 2 completely different scenarios.
What do you think, AK? Do you think do you agree with Jose, or do you think there's something else going on? Do you think there's more for one fighter to lose than the other?
It's hard to say. It's really hard to measure Germaine de Randamie's stock, because she's a little bit on that Holm tier, not as quite as popular, of course, or as well known as her, but also it feels like because of how respected she is, how competitive fights always are, and the fact that she is technically a former UFC champion. I know some people kind of gloss over that, but she is a former UFC champion if we're just going by the record books. She does pardon me, it doesn't take much for her to stay in that top 3, top 5 rankings, because again, one, she has a reputation. She has a lot of experience both in MMA and in kickboxing. And 2, there really is almost not a matchup outside of Amanda Nunes that you would say, oh, well, I don't think de Randamie has a chance here. So that's a very good thing. That's something matchmakers keep into account. And again, even the Nunes fight, she was a pretty heavy underdog, and she went the distance. And according to her, if anyone listened to her media day earlier this week, she exposed Amanda Nunes. But you guys you guys saw the fight. You can be the judge of that for yourselves. So I don't think I'll go and say that Pena has more to lose. I do think Pena needs the win here. It's been tough for her. She's only fought twice in maybe the past 3 years. One of them, not for a bad reason. She had more important things to deal with. She became a mother, of course, so nothing wrong there. But again, there's just for various other reasons she's been unable to get back in the cage. So she needs the win. She needs the win over Montano. One, it was a while ago, and 2, it was fine. It didn't really set the world on fire. But a win over, again, a former UFC champion, that just looks great in your resume. And Pena is one of the 135ers that can sell a fight. She's had a lot of opportunities to get broadcasting experience, to talk to the media. She looked very, very comfortable this week at media day. Someone asked, like, you seem less aggressive than usual. It's like, yeah, I'm used to it now. Like, this is my career. There's no reason to be aggressive. She seems very mature now. So this is her time. This is her time to get this win and really put herself in that shortlist for the title shot, because we talked about earlier, obviously Aldana with a win probably is number one contender, but if Aldana wins a close decision and Pena wins by like first round submission or something like that, which very tough to do, but if she pulls that off, then Pena can get that next title shot against Nunes whenever Nunes decides to come back. So definitely Pena has a lot more to gain and potentially to lose here.
Jose, I mean, you just have to look at the careers of these two women. GDR has the clear advantage on the feet, but Pena can be absolutely suffocating on the ground. She's done it many times throughout her career. We saw Amanda Nunes was able to keep GDR on her back through most of that title fight in December. Do you look at it as simply as that? Like, if it stays on the feet, this is GDR's fight to lose. If Pena can score takedowns, that's her formula. Is that how you're kind of looking at this one as well?
I mean, on paper, that's 100% what it is. But then I just reminded of what Germaine Randamie said at her media day, is that her and her coaches put together this game plan against Amanda Nunes, and Germaine Randamie didn't stick to it. As she said, she was looking to go in there and just like knock her head off. And she gave complete credit to Amanda Nunes for adjusting and changing her own game plan after round one. She said she exposed her in round one, and then Amanda Nunes made the adjustment, and she just didn't make the adjustment, or she just didn't stick to the game plan. So Germaine Randamie in 3 rounds, it's also not a 5-round fight. So GDR also just like destroyed Aspen Ladd in the fight before that. So I lean Germaine Randamie, especially if she does what she said she's going to do and quote sticks to a game plan, unlike what she didn't do against Amanda Nunes. I think it's Germaine Randamie's fight to lose. But Juliana Pena it's the fact that she's been out for so long. I think people just forgot how good she is and how I think she's by far, when she said, yeah, I deserve a title shot after this win, I was like, you know what? I completely forgot you were even in the title picture, but you are not wrong. And that's just because she hasn't fought enough. So I think this fight to me is, I don't know. I lean GDR, but Juliana Pena is unbelievable. She's an absolutely unbelievable fighter.
Okay. What's your pick, buddy?
I've been thinking about it this whole time. I'm going to go Pena. I don't know if I completely buy. I think there was a lot to what Randamie was saying about how, yes, she probably was a little too straight up with her posture, which made it difficult for her to defend against takedowns when she fought Nunes. But I think there's more to it than that. I do think there's probably other agencies in her takedown defense that that someone with a keener eye could point out, and I think Pena could exploit that. I think she has the kind of wrestling to take advantage of it. The striking, that's the issue. With Nunes, you had the striking balance, so there was reason for Randamie to have some concern there. Pena's still very raw in that category and doesn't have that pop of some of the top 135ers or 145ers. So I'm going Pena. I don't feel great about it, but yeah, Pena by probably a close decision.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough fight to pick. Odds makers can't even pick it as well. That's a pick 'em. Pena she has to know that if she's going to win, she's going to have to eat some big shots in order to get this fight to the ground. And she hasn't been in there with somebody like Randamie with that kind of pop. I mean, she's fought Shevchenko, but that fight went to the ground and Shevchenko beautifully submitted her. It's panned out. It's a panned out kind of fight for Pena. If she gets it to the ground, she is really tough to get off of you. So I lean Pena because of that, but like ever so slightly. But this should be a gritty fight all around as both look to implement their specific game plans. But now we have to give our love to the under the radar competitors, the under the radar matchups. Jose, I know you're not really a bout picker in these situations. You're more of a fighter to watch kind of a guy. So what's your under the radar pick for tomorrow night?
Well, I have to give a shout out to Kyler Phillips and Casey Caney, 2 Arizona boys. Kyler Phillips is a very, very interesting individual. I always enjoy interviewing him because he talks about like Mother Nature and the earth, and he's very much one of those granola type fighters. So very interesting to interview. And then of course,
Casey his hair is stunning.
His hair is unbelievable.
It is breathtaking. Like when he broke it out for his debut, because on the Ultimate Fighter he didn't have that. The Ultimate Fighter he looked like almost like a forgettable guy. Then he showed up for his first actual UFC fight with the Jesus hair, And I was like, why was this not on the show? This would have been the show if he had it on the show. It is absolutely magnificent. I'm sorry.
Right, and then
I didn't mean to
Casey Kenny is one of those guys that, especially in the Arizona and the Southwest scene, we heard about him so much, especially when he would go to the Contender Series, and we thought he'd get it, and then the contract, and of course he fought a bunch in LFA. So I think I've seen most of his regional fights. So it's always fun to see fighters that you saw like their early fights, and now they're making it big into the UFC. And Casey Kenny also is an unbelievable fighter and wants to win and then just stay here and get another fight on Fight Island. So I have to give a shout out to those two Arizona boys. Other than that, Charles Jourdain is a very fun guy to watch. He's working on his English because he's, of course, I think he's a Quebecer, right, from Montreal, if I'm not mistaken. Fellow under the radar nerd. He has a World of Warcraft tattoo on his leg, which I know got him a lot of fans from his last fight with Andre Fili, because they all showed up in my Twitter mentions saying, "Ask him about the Horde tattoo. Ask about the Horde tattoo." I'm like, don't know what that means, but I'll ask him about it. And then lo and behold, he got a lot of fans from the internet nerd world. So always have to give a shout out to one of my fellow nerds. So those three guys I got to circle. And of course, Loma Luke Bonmi, I'm excited for because she's one of the few fighters I've never seen fight in person on this card. So very excited to watch her compete.
What sticks out to you, AK, in the under the radar department?
I guess Jose's left me to talk about it, huh? The featured preliminary bout. The return of the natural born killer, Carlos Condit. Look, boy, I mean, you have to wonder, and I guess it's all welterweights we're talking about here. Is he in the same sort of line right now as Robbie Lawler, Tyron Woodley? Has he lost that ability to quote unquote pull the trigger? It's I don't know, because in the fights that he's lost, maybe the Neil Magny fight would have been a little bit. You could go back to that fight. Alex Oliveira and Michael Chiesa, I mean, they kind of exploited some weaknesses he's always had on the ground. So, maybe that's not as discouraging. But so this is his first fight since December 2018. He is now 36 years old. He's had a lot of mileage on him. We say 36 years old in fight years. Again, he's up there, considerably older. This will be his 44th professional fight. So I'm just throwing these numbers out there to give people some idea of why, we still recognize his name. We still have some anticipation for his fights, but is he anything close to the Carlos Condit that was such a fan favorite? Is so well liked even to this day. 5 straight losses. This has to be, his last hurrah. If he doesn't retire, I mean, I have to think the UFC has to release him, or at least tell him, look, we're not going to give you another fight if you lose again. So it's really intriguing. I think they gave him a reasonable matchup in Court McGee. I would put them probably around the same area if you have, keeping those sort of rankings, if that matters when you're booking a fighter like Carlos Condit at this point in his career. It's a fighter who's going to put a lot of pressure on him and who's going to push the pace. And we're going to, again, is he the Carlos Condit we once knew who could maybe throw some wicked counter that's going to take McGee out? Or is it like Lawler and Tyron Woodley, where once they get pushed back, they kind of just stay there for 15 minutes and can't throw anymore? So Prince of Positivity, a little bit of sadness here, but I am telling people it's a compelling matchup. It could be the last time that we see Carlos Condit fight in the UFC, so definitely tune in. If you don't tune in for any of the other prelims, again, this is the one that's going to lead into the main card. So, which by the way has a pretty late start. So around 10 o'clock, go to your TV, go to ESPN, ESPN Plus, or wherever you are, what have you, and let's see what Carlos Condit has left. Yeah,
I'll go with Charles Jourdain versus Josh Coulibaugh, 2 super fun fighters. The fight between Jourdain and Fili was just so fun. Oh. Coulibaugh is a finisher too, but he's looking to bounce back. He took his fight against Jalen Turner on short notice. He said he was basically like a fat kid just going in there and fighting, and didn't really pan out for him. But I think this fight could certainly steal the show. I am interested in seeing the Jordan Williams, Nasruddin Imavov fight as well. It should be a good one between 2 middleweight guys who don't like to go to the judges, both making their octagon debuts. So like we've sort of alluded to, this is not the sexiest card to look at on paper, but if you really dive deep into these matchups and look at who these fighters are stylistically, this could be a lot of fun tomorrow night as we put a bow on another preview show here on MMA Fighting. UFC Fight Island 4 tomorrow night. Prelims kick off at 7:30 Eastern time. Main card, yes, later than a pay-per-view main card starts, 10:30. Simulcast on ESPN and ESPN Plus, and we'll have you covered throughout the event. because of our boots on the ground, Jose Young. So stick with us right here at MMAfighting.com. For Jose Youngs, Alex K. Lee, the Prince of Positivity, I am Mike Heck. Thank you for watching, and we will see you tomorrow night.
You're listening to the Vox Media Podcast Network.